So today I'm bringing you up close. We are going to discuss a topic called trace, and I will share with you today every single thing that you need to know about trace when it comes to cold process soap making. So I have already mixed my oils together. In here I have lard, I have olive oil, coconut oil and canola oil. I do have some paprika infused olive oil. I had a little bit left, so that was perfect for this test batch. And then I will bring my lye solution I've already made, that's cooling down, and I will bring that together so that I can take you through the different stages of trace that you will experience when it comes to cold process soap making. So understanding the various stages of trace from light to thick, as well as the speed of trace from slow to fast, is important for making cold process soap. That is one of the biggest things that people struggle with, and to understand and troubleshoot when it comes to anything about trace if something doesn't work in their soap. So we will dive into trace today. We will dive into emulsification, and then also what do you do at every stage of trace during the soap making process. The first thing I do want to share that is there are two differences when we speak about trace. We can speak about trace in terms of the actual process of the saponification, how quickly does that happen. So then we'll talk about slow trace, medium trace and fast trace. Then we can also talk about the speed of trace. There is a ton of variables that can influence the speed of your trace, in which case we will talk about slow trace, medium trace and fast trace. Emulsification is the process by which two or more substances like oil, water and the lye are blended together to form a stable homogeneous mixture. Stable meaning that the mixture will not separate. So I am going, my oils is a little bit warmer than room temperature, and I'm going to add my lye solution that has cooled down already. I don't know if I'm going to mix this even with a stick blender. Whenever you mix something with a stick blender, it just speeds up the process of trace. So you agitate the batter and it will speed up the process. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, I'm going to add my lye. And I'm just first going to stir. And we might even see something like false trace, which is also a process by which it seems like the mixture is getting together, but then it starts almost looking like it's going to separate again. And you just have to mix past that process, and then you will get to light trace. So I'm going to show you on the stick blender though. I'm not going to blend it, but I do want to show you. Emulsification is the process. You should be able to not see any separation between the oil and the water during emulsification. And you will clearly see any separation. It's like when you actually add water and oil together and you see them separate in a jar. That's exactly what you will see on a stick blender or on a flat surface, is the separation. All right. So this, I mean, I have not even stick blended this, and this is already at an emulsification process. Now, depending on your recipe, you can do something with your batter at this stage. Maybe some people separate it out into different containers when they need a long time to work with the batter before it gets to a thick trace. That's normally when we will start working with this batter. It's maybe just before emulsification, knowing that we will still stick blend it later a little bit more. Maybe we stick blend scent in, we stick blend additives in, or just past emulsification. It really just depends on what it is and what your design with your recipe and what your plan with your recipe. I have used tallow in this recipe, so it hopefully will take some time to actually trace. Tallow is known for that. So trace is the visual and textural indication of emulsification. So when you can actually pick up the spatula, and when you dribble it across the surface of the batter, you will start to see little patterns form, a visual texture being formed on top of the soap surface. And that is the point where your batter will start to thicken up. Now, again, your batter can be at a trace, a light trace for a long time. It can be at a medium trace for a longer time, and it can be at a thick trace for a pretty quick time. So that is why it's important to actually always test your recipes and test the additives that you do want to add in your recipe. So at the light trace stage, the soap mixture resembles a thin custard. So I'm going to take you to that light trace stage. And when you lift your stirring utensil up out of the batter, out of the mixture, and drizzle it on the surface, like I said, you'll notice that it leaves a faint trace or a line on the surface. So you can clearly see we are still just at the emulsification. We are not at a light trace yet. And a light trace is ideal for creating intricate swirls and marble designs in your soap. Any design where you need a long time to work with the batter. So let's give this a little stir with the stick blender. The other thing also to keep in mind is you do not want to stick blend continuously, because you could potentially stick blend past a medium trace if you wanted your batter to be at the start of a medium trace or at the end of a thin trace. So that's the challenge. So that's why we always recommend that you don't put the stick blender in and just stick blend for 1 minute continuously. You stick blend at short bursts so that you do have some sort of control over the trace process. You can still stick blend a little bit more. So this is what we would call a very thin trace. Even when you stick blend, you are able to feel that the consistency of the batter is getting thicker, but you will notice that it almost faintly leaves a trace on top, very quickly disappear, and so that is a very, very thin trace. So I'm going to stick blend this and fast forward the video so that I can show you what it looks like when we get to a medium trace. You will be able to see that it will still leave a mark on the surface. It still disappears quickly. See that trace that it leaves there on the surface? It still disappears fairly quickly. So we are at a medium trace. We're going to stick blend some more so that we can get to a thick trace. Now, a thick trace it's almost unmistakable. I mean, even if you leave this batter, blend it until emulsification and you just leave it, it will continue to go through the saponification process and go through the different stages of trace by itself, because you've stirred the mixture and you agitated the mixture to evoke that chemical process. So with thick trace, your soap mixture will have the consistency of a thick It's almost like thick mashed potatoes, soft mashed potatoes. And when you lift your stirring utensil, you will see we don't have that yet. But when you lift your stick blender or your spatula, the mixture leaves a significant trace that doesn't disappear quickly. And thick trace is perfect for simple rustic soap designs, and or when you're, well, even if you are in a hurry to mold your soap. But yeah, normally thick trace is perfect for those simple rustic designs that some people are looking for. So while we are waiting for this batter to get to a thicker trace, or a thick trace at least, I would like to talk about trace speed, slow, medium and fast, which is also something that you need to consider. Apart from the consistency of trace, the speed of trace is influenced by factors like the temperature of your ingredients, the blending technique you use, and even the type of ingredients that you use, the type of oils you use, fragrance oils that you use, even essential oils that you use. So every single additive or addition to your soap can make a difference to the speed of the trace. And you will notice, for example, that my batter takes a very long time to actually get to a thick trace, because I use tallow, almost 50% tallow in this batter. So slow trace, all that a slow trace means is that it takes longer to achieve that emulsification, or it takes longer to get to go through the trace stages. And this is generally beneficial for intricate soap designs that require multiple colors and swirls, like your gradient designs, your lunar swirls. And a slow trace allows for more creativity and flexibility, because you have a longer time to actually work with the batter and do what you want to do with the batter. That is also why certain oils work great, and you want to read up on the oils. For example, a pomace olive oil will speed up your trace process significantly, as opposed to a refined olive oil or a virgin olive oil. Then you also get a medium trace. Most soap makers again aim for a medium trace for whatever they use, even with the fragrance oils. If you look at fragrance oils and the notes of fragrance oils on the website, it will tell you that this is a fragrance oil that will speed up trace. It might even slow down trace, make your batter even more fluid, or it can speed up trace significantly. And there are soapers that do work with that, especially if you work with layers and you want the layer to harden quickly so that you can pour on the next layer. You're probably going to want to look for a fragrance oil that will give you that thick trace very quickly. Then there's also fast trace. A fast trace can it can catch you off guard, especially if you're not prepared. So that is why it's important. Test your fragrance oils, test your additives that you're planning to add into your soap mixture or your soap batter. Because when that soap batter starts to thicken up quickly, it leaves you very little room for any type of design. Then you have to get it into the mold. Of course, if that's the goal, mix everything together because you love a fragrance. And a lot of soapers, we do that. We just find something that's really great to work with, but it speeds up trace extremely quickly. But we know that, so we just make sure everything is prepared. You want everything around you already prepared so that you can put that soap batter into the mold as quickly as possible. Now, trace in soap making is influenced by several factors, like I mentioned in the beginning. Understanding these are important. It will help you to achieve the desired consistency for what it is that you want to do. It will help you to plan upfront properly for your designs and what it is that you do want to do. And one of the first things are oil and lye temperature, as well as ambient temperature outside in your environment. The temperature of oils and lye solution can significantly impact trace. The warmer you use soap, the quicker it can speed up trace. The lower temp you soap at, the slower trace will happen. So the warmer temperatures tend to accelerate the trace. If you ever come across that, then always try to go back first and lower your temperatures at which you use soap. And cooler temperatures then of course can slow them down. Then the type and the ratio of oils. So the combination of oils in your soap recipe affects trace. So oils with a high percentage of unsaturated fatty acids like olive oil, it can slow down trace. Refined and virgin olive oil, like I've mentioned, pomace olive oil is known for speeding up trace significantly. And then oils with a high percentage of saturated fatty acids like coconut oil can speed up trace. So easy thing also to remember, harder oils will speed up trace, not necessarily speed it up, but it will go through the process significantly quicker. And the more liquid oils you have can slow down your process for you. Then also the lye concentration, the concentration of lye in your solution can influence trace. A stronger lye solution, which means there's less water in it, can accelerate trace. So if you especially live in a humid area and you decide to add a water discount, in other words, it means that you're going to add less water based on your soap calculations in the soap calculator, that can accelerate trace. And if you want something to slow down trace, you can actually make your lye solution a little bit weaker, granted that it works for the rest of your recipe. Also the stirring technique. The way you stir and mix your batter can affect trace. So like vigorous stirring, vigorous mixing with a stick blender will definitely speed up trace. And if you maybe just blend with a whisk, it will slow down the trace, actually take a longer time to come to trace. So oftentimes when you work with a fragrance oil that will speed up trace, we always recommend that you, or any other additive, we always recommend that you hand stir that into your batter. That's why we make those recommendations. And then of course additives, I've mentioned that also fragrance oils, essential oils, some clays, herbs, exfoliants, all of that can influence trace and affect it. Fragrance oils, especially those with a high vanilla content, may accelerate trace. And yeah, some additives, even like clays, can slow down trace because they have very high absorbing properties. The water content, I've already mentioned that with the lye solution can impact trace. If you have more liquid in, it will slow down trace. Less liquid, it will speed up trace or accelerate that. Colorants can affect trace, like certain pigments or oxides. So some of them can accelerate trace again, some can slow it down. And also your recipe complexity. The complexity of your soap recipe, the number of ingredients, their specific characteristics can also impact trace. And then I've mentioned in the beginning as well, your room temperature, your ambient temperature, even your humidity are all factors that can play a role in trace. So by considering and adjusting these variables, you can actually control your trace significantly and use that to soap according to the design that you want to create. And that's why it's important that we always advise soapers to experiment as much as you can to see what happens with the ingredients that you use, and then how are you going to use those ingredients and play to the strengths of the design of the soap. So I'm going to continue to mix this until we get to a thick trace. Already poured some of the batter into the mold. So what I do want to do now is I'm going to add some fragrance oil to see if we can speed up the trace. Like I said, I've used tallow. Tallow is known for slowing down trace significantly. And what I am going to use is I am going to use a few drops of warm cinnamon. Let me just bring it closer. A few drops of warm cinnamon from Brightpack. And I've not measured this. I mean, I maybe have about total batter here, about 100, just over 100 grams, because my mold is, the cavity is about 100 grams. And I'm just going to add a few drops, but please make sure always when you make soap that you measure out your fragrance oils. So hopefully that will speed up the trace a little bit. Comment I also need to make in terms of fragrance oils and when it comes to trace is that remember when we test fragrance oils, we use a specific recipe and a combination of oils. So when the fragrance oil notes says on the website that it will slow down trace or it's a slow, medium, fast trace fragrance oil, it is possible that the mixture of oils that you are using with additional additives that you are adding could speed up trace significantly. So your batter can behave differently from what is indicated on the website. So that's why it's always important to make a small little test batch with your specific oils and the additives that you plan to use alongside the fragrance oils. You can see here we have now reached a thick trace, start to reach a thick trace. You can see clearly it has the consistency almost of like, start to get the consistency like of soft mashed potatoes. And when you lift your spatula, it leaves a significant trace that doesn't disappear quickly. So there you go. All the stages of trace in one batch of soap making.